Hi, it's Stephen of Bland Designs for Class Act, and today what I would like to show you is how to use the Gelli plate system for creating background papers and papers that you can use to create embellishments. And what we're going to do with the pages that we create, we're going to change into cards. So before we begin, I want to explain some of the materials that we're going to be using. Of course, we're going to be using the Gelli plate system. Gelli plates are basically a silicone pad. Let me get it out of the clamshell so you can have a better look. And these are a little awkward to look at sometimes. Okay, oops, dropping it all over the place. So the Gelli pad, actually it's a Gelli plate, is what I should be calling it. Comes on a couple of pieces of acetate just to keep it in the package. And this is what it is. It's just a clear piece of like jelly. That's why they call it a Gelli plate, I guess. The other thing we're going to be using is this neat little acrylic plate. It looks very much like a plate you would use in a Cuttlebug, and in fact you could use it in a you could use a Cuttlebug plate for what we're going to do. This I ordered from Clarity Stamps in England, which, by the way, as an aside, if you go to Clarity Stamps on YouTube, Barbara, who's the owner of Clarity Stamps, she's got some great videos on how to use the Gelli plates. So I'm just putting that on my Gelli plate, and because it's silicone and this is acrylic, it sticks, okay? Which is going to be important when we get working with these today. The other thing we're going to be using, usually with Gelli plates, you use acrylic paints. Well, I am using acrylic paints, but I'm using the Holtz Distress paints for this. It's not quite as thick as a regular acrylic plate paint, but you will get a really interesting design from it. I picked 4 colors that I'm going to use today. It's up to you what colors you want to use. And I'm going to use these. I'm using Salty Ocean, Broken China, Picked Raspberry, and Spiced Marmalade. And we'll see what we're going to get out of that combination. The other thing you're going to need are some pieces of paper to print on. Now this is just ordinary cardstock, and I've cut these to 5 1/4 by 5 or by 7 1/4. So 5 1/4 by 7 1/4. Reason being is my Gelli plate is 5 by 7, but I find that if I have a little bit of a 1/4 inch overlay, it's easy to peel it off, as you'll see when we get working with this. Okay, so we have that all together, and we're going to try several different techniques when we're doing this. The first one I'm just going to try with color on color. Okay, so I'm going to apply some paint to the Gelli plate, and I'm going to use 2 colors for this in the Distress paint line, Salty Ocean and Broken China. Now, usually you use acrylic paints for this, which are a little thicker than the Distress paints. And what I'm doing right now is I'm just sort of dabbing it on. I find it comes out a little faster. And just smoothing it on. I'm going to pick up the other color here, and the colors can overlap, no problem. I just want to get color all over the pad right now. And then I'm going to take a brayer, and I'm just going to smooth the paint out. Now you don't need a lot of paint for this, and I'm just smoothing it out, kind of trying to keep it as even and relatively thin. Now, when I want to clean off my brayer, I take a piece of scrap paper, or cardstock in this case, and I just wipe it across that. And actually, as we build on other colors, this actually becomes a decorative sheet in itself. Okay, now that I've got the color there, I'm going to take one of my sheets of paper, and I'm going to pull the layer off. So here's what we do. We just lay it down, and because I made this a little bigger than the Gelli plate itself, it's going to be very easy to pick up on the corners and peel this back. Now this is where I'll take another brayer, and you can do it with your hands if you want. I prefer using a brayer, and just press on it and smooth it out. And give it, a moderate amount of pressure. And this will pick up the color. So let's see what we've got. The big reveal. Okay. Not bad. Now you'll notice I've got some texture in there, and there's nothing you can do about that. In fact, that's what we want, but it's going to pick up whatever's on the Gelli plate. So now that's one level of color. Now I'm going to put another color on. I'm going to use the picked raspberry. I'm going to do the same thing as I did a moment ago. And once again, I'm going to just blend another color into this. And this is the spiced marmalade. Again, you don't worry about colors overlapping. That's perfectly all right. And we'll take our Breyer or Brayer? I think it's Brayer. And we're just going to smooth it until we've got something that we like. Okay, that looks good. Wipe it off on that scrap piece. And now take the same sheet as I used a moment ago, and I have the blue on it. I'm going to lay that down and smooth it out. And let's see what we get this time. Remember, I'm putting one color on top of another. Okay, not bad. I've got kind of a mottled effect, a little marbleized in there happening, and that's good for a background. So that's a very basic technique. Now you can build on this with other colors or with other objects, and I'm going to show you how to do that. But before I show you how to do that, I'm going to talk about cleaning the jelly plate. Now, you do not have to clean the jelly plate. You can leave. There's not that much on here. Sometimes you can pull a second print from what's left on the jelly plate. This is often called a ghost print. But if you want to have it a little bit cleaner because you're starting a new project, all you need to do is put a clean sheet of paper down on it and pull it up, and that'll take any of the residue off. And you can see there wasn't that much residue, and I'm going to save this because I'm going to probably use this piece a little bit later. Okay, so that was the first technique. This technique I call just putting color on color. All right. Next one is using a stencil. So I got to grab a stencil for this. And any stencil will work. I especially like things that have sort of an abstract design. So I'm going to find one here in my stencil collection that I think might work well. This one. Okay, this one's kind of neat. This is a brand new one. I haven't used this one before. I'm not sure where I got this one, but I'll just put that aside. I'm going to lay down some color. I'll go with my picked raspberry, I think. And this time, instead of mixing colors, although I could mix colors, I'm just going to cover the whole thing in this picked raspberry. Make sure I've got the surface covered, and then I'm going to use my brayer and just smooth it out. It helps if you lift the brayer a little bit, I find, as you go over it, just to get your colors even. Wipe that off on my scrap sheet, which is out of the scene right now, but you don't really need to see that. Then you can take your stencil and you're just going to lay it right down, just like that. And then I'm going to take my piece of paper, put it on top, and smooth it down. And see what we get this time. Whoa, that's pretty cool. Okay, another way that I could have done this, and I will show you here. So I'll lay down my color again. I'm going to use the same color as before. Actually, I could have picked up a ghost from here because there's still some strong lines of color there. Probably should have done that, but let's see what we get this time. My paint on. And by the way, this paint dries fairly quickly, so that's a good thing too. Now, I'm going to put it down again this time, just as I did a moment ago. And I'm going to take a sheet of paper. Actually, I'm going to take the sheet of paper I used to just clean off the jelly plate before. I'll lay that down and smooth it down just like I did a moment ago with that stencil. peel it up. So I got the same effect as last time, but this is what I want to show you. Carefully peel your stencil off. Take a clean sheet of paper, or you could take one. Actually, I have one here that I did off camera where I just put plain blue across it. I'm going to lay that down on top, smooth it out. And what this should do is pick up the residue paint that was covered by the stencil. And there we are. Hope you can see that. So this has a blue background, but it has the subtlety of the stencil already built onto it. Now, you might be saying, well, you got these white margins around here. That's on purpose so I could peel the paper off, because we are not actually going to use these papers in there just as they are. We're going to be cutting these up to make our embellishments and that kind of thing. So that's another technique. Now I'm going to show you something else you can do with the stencil. And I think I'm going to change my color this time, but I'm going to add a little texture. And I'm going to add the texture simply by using a little piece of bubble wrap. So I'm going to lay down some color. I think I'll do it in this one again. What was that one called? Spice Marmalade. Good exercise for your hand here. Okay, I've got that dabbed on. Let's smooth it out. And again, I don't worry about how clean my brayer is because it doesn't really matter. It all adds color and texture. I'm going to lay down my stencil once again. And I'm going to take the bubble wrap and I'm just going to press it in to the stencil in a couple of the areas. One more there. That looks pretty good. Take a clean sheet of paper, lay it down, smooth it out. And this time we should have a two-texture effect. We've got the stencil effect, and within the open spaces of the stencil, we should see the texture created by the bubble wrap. At least that's my theory. Let's hope that works. Oh yes, that worked really well. I hope you can see that. You can see all the little texture to that. That's really kind of neat. Okay, and I think I'll peel my stencil off at this point. And I think I'll try a shadow or a ghost. Sorry, this is called a ghost. When you take a second print before you've cleaned off your jelly plate. This whole process is known as monoprinting. Monoprinting because you basically only get one good print. And by the way, you're never going to be able to probably duplicate most of these. Again, so things that I'm pulling up here, yours are going to look very different, but it's okay. It's still going to be a neat effect. Whoa, that one's kind of cool too. See that? Okay. So that's with a stencil. So we've done color on color, we've done stenciling, and then stencils with texture. What about using rubber stamps? Well, let's try that. So I have some brand new rubber stamps that have just come out at Class Act, texture stamps. And I've been dying to use these. In fact, they're so new, they still got the paper on the cling part on the back. They're little swirls. You can see that. And this one looks pretty cool. The circle within the circle. So I'm just going to take these and I'm just going to use those two. And I'm going to grab an acrylic plate and just put my stamp on that. Let me move this out of the way. Now, I'm infamous for not washing my stencils. It's up to you. These are water-soluble paint, so it'll come off quite easily. So let's see, color-wise. Let's go back. I'm only playing with 4 colors today for the sake of simplicity. You can use as many colors as you want. Just be careful. Too many colors on one pull, and it might start to look really muddy. For example, this pole I did at the very beginning, if I was to add another color to that, I think it would go a little dark and be too muddy. So this is what? Salty Ocean again. So let's use Salty Ocean. And just for the sake of seeing how these rubber stamps will work, I'm just going to use the one color this time. Salty Ocean, as I mentioned. Now the thing with rubber stamps is they will leave an impression, very much like the stencils do when you press them into the silicone pad here, the jelly plate. And that's one of the properties of the jelly plate, which makes them so interesting and so much fun to use. You can use almost anything to create lines or shapes in it. Now, you notice in my blue, my brayer was still a little bit messy. I didn't get all the color off it, so my blue is gone a little muddied, but that's okay. So now I'm just going to stamp this. And I'm going to use the smaller one. You don't have to press too hard. Now you see I got a little ridge there because I pressed a little bit hard in here. And I got the tip of this thing into it. One right there, but that's okay. That adds variety to it. And in fact, since I was telling you that you can add other shapes into it simply by using, say, the end of a pencil. And you can make little squiggly marks here and there. You can even make little dots. Oh, that's going to be kind of cool. I can sort of cover up that mistake, although there are no mistakes, just opportunities for embellishment. Well, I think this is going to look pretty cool when I do the pole. Okay, take a piece of paper. Smooth it out. And time for the reveal. This is the part that's most exciting. Whoa, take a look at that. I hope that's showing up. That is really cool. So I'm just put that one aside for a second. So that was putting a rubber stamp into it. And also I used just a tool. I used the end of an eraser and the end of a pencil. So what else can we do with this? Well, really, it's up to you. It's your imagination. You can do combinations of things. Let's add a little bit more of the Salty Ocean again. Okay, that's plenty. Smooth it out. And I think I'm going to add a second color to this. I'm going to add a little bit of... Now, there's a couple of ways you could do this. You could let this layer dry, and it doesn't take that long. It takes it maybe a couple of minutes, or you can just blend this in. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to... And this is where experimentation comes in. I'm just adding a couple of drops here and there, cleaning off my brayer, which you can't see really off screen. And I'm just going to blend it in slightly. I don't know if I've got enough on here or not. Well, we'll see how that works. Okay, so like I said, you can take your stencil now. And before, we added the stencil, and then we took our bubble wrap and pressed it into it. Well, this time I'm going to use that little stamp that we used a few minutes ago. And I'm just going to stamp randomly. I have no idea what this is going to look like, but we'll find out in a moment. Okay, piece of paper. time for the reveal. Drum roll, please. Whoa, look at that. Now that is really cool. I hope you can see the combination of the rubber stamp and the stencil in that design. And you'll notice some of my pink did come through. It's not actually pink, it's, what is it, picked raspberry. But it kind of came through there, it's kind of subtle. So that's good. And let's just see if we can get a ghost image here. And even if you don't get much of a ghost image, you're cleaning off the jelly plate, and that's a good thing. Whoa, that is kind of sharp in itself too. Okay, I'm going to go away for a few minutes because I've just run out of paper. I need to cut some more the right size, and then I'm going to show you a few other little tricks. Okay, so I'm back. Now, you noticed on some of these ones that are a little bit lighter, they're not that easy to see. This in itself is kind of a neat effect. It could make a nice background for a card or whatever, but I want to add a little color to this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this one, and this is the beauty of jelly plates. You can add color onto color, and this time I'm really going to mix up my colors a little bit. I'm going to add some of the picked raspberry. I'm going to put some of the spiced marmalade, and this time I'm playing around with how I'm laying down my colors. I'm sort of doing them in little rows. I'm going to use some of the broken china. And I'm going to use the salty ocean. So I'm using all four colors that I said I was going to be using today. Now you want to know something? I'm not going to smooth this one out. I'm going to see what I get just with this kind of thing, with the dabbing on the texture. So I'm just going to lay my paper right directly on that, smooth it out. Let's see what we got. Whoa, that's kind of vibrant. Basically, it picked up the dots just exactly as I put them on. Now, I've still got a lot of paint left over on here. So what I'm going to do is going to take this, which was a ghost print, and I'm just going to print over top of it. Well, I'm sure I can use this for something. Not quite as impressed because the shadow was, or the ghost one was pretty light. You can sort of see it. I don't know if you can pick it up here in the camera. You can sort of see it in the background. And then these other colors came up, but they were pretty vibrant, pretty thick because I didn't smooth them out. But still, that's another effect. Okay, I've got this one that had a little bit of stuff going on here and whatnot. So I think I'm going to, you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to lay it right down and see what happens with what's left of the color. Don't know if this is going to pick up much, but we'll give it a good rub. Let's see what we get. Yeah, picked up a little bit more color in spots of it. That's not too bad. I think I like that. I'm just going to leave it just as it is. Okay, another method I'm going to show you involves a little bit of drying time. Okay, so these paints dry very fast, and I think I'll start with laying down a little bit of the picked raspberry. And this time I am going to smooth it out with my brayer. And I think I'm going to use a different stencil this time, just for a little variety. Let's see. You want to use a stencil that's got some pattern to it. I'm going through my book of stencils here and looking for something that I think might work. Okay, this might be kind of interesting. Let's try this one and see what this looks like. Okay. I'm laying it down, and what I'm going to do is I am going to take a print up first. Okay, so basically work like a stencil. I'm just going to put that aside because I'm not finished with that. I'll just pull up my stencil here. And now we're going to let this have a couple of minutes to dry. So I'm just going to stop the video, let this have about 3 or 4 minutes to dry, and then I'll be back. Okay, this has been sitting here for about 5 or 6 minutes, and it's not really that dry. So I don't think this is going to work, but let's give it a shot. I'm going to add another color on top of it, and I'm hoping the colors will not blend together. I have a feeling that this technique I'm doing, which I've seen done with acrylic paints, it works better with acrylic paints than it does with the distress paints. And that could be because of the water solubility of these particular paints, the consistency of them. So let's put a little bit of this in the background, smooth it out. I have no idea what we're going to get here. Okay. Let's take a piece of paper and let's see what we're going to get. So, okay. Well, it wasn't exactly what I was hoping for, but not bad. It's kind of interesting. And let's see, remember this one that we did back here? Yeah, I've got a whole pile of these all over the place now. This is this one that we pulled with the stencil the first time. I'm going to see if what'll happen if I pick up the ghost on this one. Well, that's kind of cool in itself too. Okay. Now, I think what I'm going to try and do is I'm going to work with this one. I'm going to see if I can add another bit more color to that. And I'm going to add some of this. Now, I still have a ghost print on here. I could clean this off by putting another sheet of paper down, just pulling that up. Or I think I'm just going to leave it on there and I'm just going to add some of this spiced marmalade. But this time, I'm going to smooth this out once I get all my color on. And I think I'm going to use my background stamps in this that I was using before. So yeah, let's do a little combination here. I'm going to put the two stamps on one pad and see what happens. So that, let's turn it this way and do that, that, actually maybe take that one off, do that, and I've still got my bubble wrap over here, so maybe I'll just add a little texture over top of everything. I'm not pressing this in too hard. Okay, let's take this print, and they will curl up on you as they dry, but that's okay. You can just roll them back on themselves and I'll flatten them out. Let's lay it down. Let's see what we get. Ooh, that's kind of cool. Look at that. Hope that's picking it up. So I got, in the background, you can see some of the pressed in stamps and some of the bubble wrap. Okay, that's not bad at all. Okay, so we've used color on color, and then we did stencils, and then we did stencils with texture using the bubble wrap, and then we did rubber stamps, and this time I kind of did everything in here. Color on color, stencil, rubber stamp, bubble wrap, it's all there. So I have all these sheets now. Let's pull one more. Let's clean off our jelly plate. And you see, you can go on for days with this. And there's a whole lot of other things you can do too. And I really recommend that you do a search on YouTube, especially for Clarity Stamps. They're in the UK. And Barbara, the owner of it, as I mentioned before, she has some excellent tutorials on doing all kinds of really neat things with the jelly plate. So I highly recommend going to her YouTube channel and checking that out. Now, that was a ghost. It's very faint, but you know, that might make an interesting background on a card. So I'm just going to lay that aside. So now, when you're done with your jelly plate, basically I've picked up all the paint on it. All you need to do is take a baby wipe. I'll grab my baby wipes over here and just simply give it a wipe down, getting the dried bits off of it so it's nice and clean for the next time that you're going to use it. They're very easy to clean. You could run it under a tap if you wished. I'm using non-alcohol baby wipes. Don't use alcohol on your jelly plates. Just use water and or a baby wipe that is not alcohol free. And that's that. Now you can store it back in its original clamshell that it came in. That'll keep it very fresh. And when I come back, we're going to start building the cards. Okay, so I'm back, and what I want to do is just show you how I created the card using a couple of the sheets of the jelly plate prints that we made. So I used two combinations here. I used one that was in the pinky color that we created, and one that had some of the blue and some of the pink into it. I took a basic pale pink piece of cardstock, 8.5 by 11, and created a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch folded card. Then I took a piece of my jelly plate paper, and cut it down so that I have about a 1/4 inch or so border all the way around. Just cut out a square using my paper trimmer. And then just to give a little bit of interest to it, I used one of my corner chompers and created a scallop corner on both the card itself and on the background plate. And I just centered and adhered the background plate to the card. Now, to create the other embellishments, to create the butterfly and the sediment in here, all I did was I went to another sheet that I felt coordinated well with my background jelly plate piece and put it through my brother scan and cut out a couple of butterflies. I made one butterfly a little bigger. In fact, here's what they look like when they're cut out. It might be a little difficult to see on a blue background because they are a shade of blue, so I'll put them on black. And this one is just slightly bigger than this one because I wanted to give it a 3D effect. Now, you don't need a brother scan and cut to cut out your embellishments. If you've got paper punches, if you've got dies, you can use flowers, butterflies, shapes, whatever grabs your fancy, and put it through your die cutter because this paper will work just like any other cardstock through your die cutter. I just like my brother's scan and cut, so that's what I used. So I cut out 4 butterflies, 2 large, 2 little slightly smaller. And then what I did was I outlined them, and I don't know if it's showing up on the camera very well, but I simply distressed them with some black soot distress ink and my ink applicator and just around all the edges just to give it a little bit of definition. That's all I did to that. I did the same thing here with the sentiment, just went around, and that's just cut out basic shape, and I stamped thanks onto the front of it. So it's a thank you card. You could stamp anything you'd like. So I'm going to show you how I did the butterflies first of all. So You're probably familiar with the Paper Blossom tools and kits, the stylus and the mat. And if you're not, go on YouTube. You'll find lots of examples of how to do this. This is pretty basic. In fact, I make all kinds of flowers all the time. But it also works on butterflies. So I take my butterfly, just turn it over to the back, and I just took the largest stylus, and I'm going around in small circles all over the back of the butterfly. And if you've never done this before to make flowers, all I'm doing is I'm breaking down the fibers in the cardstock to make the paper sort of curl onto itself. This gives it sort of a, a puffy look. Turn it back over, do the same thing on the other side. Yes, your paper's going to get wrinkly and worn looking, and that's okay because that's the look I'm going for here. And it doesn't take a whole lot to get this going. And now I've got it curled this way, so I want my wings to curl sort of behind the butterfly. So I'm just going to add a few more little touches here with the stylus and put it down. I'm just going to press in the center. So you see the wings sort of start to curl up. So that's the big one. That's going to be the background piece, as in here. Then I'm going to take the smaller butterfly and I'm going to do the same thing. Just going around using the larger stylus. I mean, it doesn't really matter what size stylus you use. The larger one, I think, works faster. You could use the next size down if you wished. The more you work the paper, the more of a curl, more of a distress effect you're going to get. Get right up there. And I'm flipping it back over again. I just want those wings to curl slightly backwards. And put it down and do it in the center. Now to attach them, all I'm going to do is use a pop dot or dimensional square. In this case, I have dimensional dots. Just take a small one. I'm going to put it on the back of the center of the body of the smaller butterfly. Peel off the protective coating. Did I get it off? No, I didn't. I have problems with this. You ladies with nails, you can do this much better than I can. Oh, I got it off. Okay. Don't know where it went. All right. And I'm just pressing it into the center here of the butterfly. And I like to give it another little press in the center to get those wings to curl up. And then just to add a little bling to it, I'm going to take a little self-adhesive little pearl. Just peel it off the package. They already come with a little sticky on the back of them. Or you could use glue. And I just press that into the center. And then I'm going to take another, I'm just going to take a little bit of glue. And I'm just going to put a little white glue on the back of this and place it on my card front, right about there. Press it down. And I'll let that dry. And then once it's really dry, I'll fluff up the wings a little bit. But you also notice that my wings have a little bit of a shine to them, a little bling gloss. See if that light will reflect it a little bit. Okay, so you get a little closer. See that? I just wanted to touch. I could use glitter, but what I'm using is Wink of Stella Clear. I love the Wink of Stellas. They're a great product. They're like a water brush, only with color and glitter. In this case, I'm using clear. Now, I could use colored Wink of Stella on this too, the blue, to give it a little bit more, a deeper shade. But in this case, I like the color that it already is, and I'm going to keep it that way. And I'm just putting it on the top butterfly. And I'm just give the wings a little fluff. That glue is still wet, so I'm just doing this gently. When it dries more, you can pop them up, and there you have it. My finished card using jelly plates. The beauty of giving a card like this is no two will be alike. They're fun to make, and there's endless possibilities. So I hope you enjoyed this technique, and feel free to experiment as much as you possibly like with jelly plates. That's what they're for. Thanks. We'll see you again next time.